Memphis offered $200 million to the Big 12 to get membership into their conference, and unfortunately, $200 million was not enough for the Big 12 to allow Memphis in. And Memphis is a respectable program, both in basketball and football. Their football program has had back-to-back double-digit winning seasons. They finished ranked 25th in the final college football playoff rankings. They got a pretty good NIL backing. They're supported by FedEx. So with everything that Memphis has, why is it that $200 million wasn't enough to get them entrance into the Big 12 conference? Because it's not as if the Big 12 is like the Big 10 or the SEC. It kind of is just the best that you can get if you're unable to get into the Power 2 conferences in college football. And you would have thought that the Big 12 would have opened Memphis with open arms, because Memphis is a respectable program. But from a Big 12 standpoint, it makes a good amount of sense why they didn't want to allow Memphis in. Because, for one, Memphis is a small market team. They don't really have a huge fan base. They don't really have a huge donor base like what UCF, BYU, and Houston had when they got accepted and they got invited into the Big 12 a few years ago after the conference realignment moves that the SEC made, getting Texas and Oklahoma, and the Big 10 acquiring some of the best teams from the West Coast. Houston, BYU, all are located in really favorable media markets. And BYU is a religious school, so they have an incredibly large fan base that's not just located in the U.S., but just globally. BYU has a lot of fans. And UCF is located in Orlando, which is a really good touring destination. And they have over 70,000 students on campus and a huge alumni, one of, if not the largest alumni in America. Memphis was not like any of those three teams that got invited into the Big 12 when they initially started to realign their conference. Now, your only fair comparison to a recent new member of the Big 12 compared to Memphis is Cincinnati, because Cincinnati isn't really in a big market. But remember, at the time that Cincinnati first got invited to the Big 12, they weren't too far away removed from being the first G5 team at the time to get into the college football playoffs, which was only 4 teams at that point. So the projection of Cincinnati's ceiling was a lot higher than what it is now with them not having Luke Fickell. Memphis, on the other hand, yeah, they've been a really good program. They've won double-digit games back-to-back seasons, but they haven't really made a lot of noise from a national standpoint. And the Big 12 doesn't view Memphis as a big enough draw that increases the value of the conference. You see, adding BYU, UCF, Houston, Utah, Colorado, all those teams increase the value of the Big 12. Plus, the Big 12 isn't as desperate now for teams as what they were 2-3 years ago, because when the first big moves of conference realignment were made by the SEC and the Big 10, the Big 12 was just trying to get whoever to survive. If Memphis would have offered $200 million to get into the Big 12 in 2021, 2022, they more than likely would have gotten into the conference. But now with the Big 12 already pretty solid and not really as unstable as what it was a few years ago, there really isn't no need to just accept anybody that you can. And the ACC is on the brink of getting ready to implode. Clemson and FSU are already trying to get out of the conference. And there's a strong chance by the time we get to 2028 that both of those programs will be free agents. And rather they go to the Big 10 or the SEC, there will be a domino effect when you see schools like Miami, North Carolina follow suit as well and get out of the ACC. And when the ACC implodes, the Big 12 wants to be that conference who gets the scraps from the remainder of the teams in that conference. So there's no point in getting Memphis when you can get better teams that can increase your conference's value when the ACC eventually ends up completely collapsing. Memphis, right now, despite the improvements that they've made to their facilities and the NIL department, they still are nothing better than a top-tier G5 program, similar to Boise State. Boise State, as consistently good as what they've been from a G5 standpoint, they don't move the needle in terms of viewership. They don't move the needle in terms of bringing a different audience to the Big 12. The Big 12 can now afford to be selective with who they invite and who they allow membership into the conference. And also, if you're willing to pay $200 million for membership into the conference, it kind of is a red flag because it shows that you're desperate. And why is Memphis desperate to get into a Power 4 conference? Because Memphis knows that the formation of college football Super League is coming sooner rather than later. And when you do have that happen, you're only going to have 3 power conferences in the sport. You're going to have the ACC, who's going to be gone. So whoever goes to the Big 10, the SEC, like Clemson, FSU, Miami, and North Carolina, the Big 12 is going to get the remainder of those schools, and essentially it'll be the Big 3. You'll have the Big 12, you'll have the SEC, and you'll have the Big 10. And then you'll just have everybody else. Memphis doesn't want to be in that category of everybody else because they know if they are, the G5 is essentially going to be irrelevant because they're not going to have a guaranteed spot of getting into the playoffs. They're not going to get as much revenue as what they could get in one of those big power conferences as what they currently are getting right now. Right now, Big 12 teams get compensated $31 million per season due to the new $200-something billion media rights deal that they recently agreed upon. And the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, or I should say the American Conference, since they rebranded to that, you only get $7 million per season in that conference. And being in a conference like the Big 12, although it isn't as prestigious as what the Big 10 and the SEC are, you still get more visibility playing in the Big 12 than what you do in the American Conference. Because if you're playing in the Big 12, then you're getting your games showcased on the ESPN networks, ESPN2. If you're not on ESPN, you're on either of the Fox Sports networks, either on Fox itself or FS1, while compared to playing in the American, you're being played games on ESPNU, the CBS Sports Network, and you don't have a bunch of visibility. You're not really getting broadcasted to a huge national audience that's going to increase your fan base and increase your visibility in the eyes of recruits. Memphis getting denied despite willing to pay $200 million to get entrance into the Big 12 is not as surprising as what you may think, because the Big 12 has stabilized now. They just don't need to accept anybody just to stay afloat like how they did a few years ago. Now, if Memphis can't get into the Big 12, what's next for them? Because the ACC is not a feasible option because they're about to fall apart. Probably their best option would be getting into the Pac-12, which just aligned with some of the Mountain West schools. They lured them in. They also got a bunch of the better upper tier G5 programs as well. If Memphis can get into the Pac-12, that's probably their best chance to survive, because the Pac-12 is probably going to be the conference that gets the best of the best G5 programs that are available. And the Pac-12 itself, they won't be a Power 3 conference when we get the formation of College Football Super League, but at least it will be a conference to where those teams in it will be able to get a respective media rights deal. The teams that will have to share that among each other, it should be more than what the teams in the American are getting right now. And the Pac-12 still allows you to survive versus being in the current conference that you're in right now and just about to be on the vote of sinking underneath water with how it looks like the NCAA is just losing control over this sport. Eventually, the SEC, the Big 10 are going to branch off and they're going to do their own thing. And I don't think enough people realize how close we are to this happening. And that's why Memphis desperately wants to get in to a Power 4 conference, and that's why they were willing to pay $200 million to get into the Big 12, because the Big 12 was their only realistic opportunity of getting into a respectable power conference, because you know the Big 10 and the SEC are not going to take them, and the ACC is a ship that's about to sink. So there's no point in hopping on that wagon just to eventually drown when the rest of the conference goes under when FSU and Clemson leave.